And welcome back to the Correspondents on Voice of America. I'm Arcega. Well, it was the referendum heard around the world. A historic vote late last week in the UK to exit the European Union. The simple majority decision sent economic shockwaves around the world and set off a series of political bombshells in Britain. Here's a quick look now at how the Brexit vote unfolded last week from VOA's Europe correspondent, Luis Ramirez.
Outside number 10 Downing Street, jubilation.
We've made the wrong decision, I think, 40 years ago, but now we've made it right, and we've led the way for Europe again, and I hope everyone else comes with us.
I told you, now resign! Resign!
With his mandate evaporating, revelers called on Cameron to resign. Moments later, an announcement.
The British people have made a very clear decision to take a different path. And as such, I think the country requires fresh leadership to take it in this direction.
The news sent world markets tumbling, and the British pound plunged to its lowest in 3 decades. But that did not put a damper on these celebrations.
Future is looking bright. We're the 5th largest economy. We are a self-confident people. We are able now to make our rules to suit our own industries. And now is the time to buy Britain.
After the storm, Brexit supporters see good days ahead, going it alone.
And to help us sort out the possible consequences of Brexit, we're joined via Skype in Budapest, Hungary, by VOA Europe correspondent Luis Ramirez, who filed that excellent report. And here in our Washington studio, we have VOA senior business reporter Jim Randall, my friend, along with our social media correspondent G. Abby Lee. I'm so glad all three of you could join us, but I'm going to ask the first question to Luis. Luis, for such a simple yes or no vote, the consequences of this have been anything but. Now, you're in Hungary, so I do want to talk to you about the impact of Brexit there. But before we do, I want to know what the political fallout so far has been in Britain. We know Prime Minister David Cameron stepping down. Who's going to replace him?
Well, it's down to 2 candidates within his Conservative Party. We have Home Secretary Theresa May, who's been very quiet throughout the campaign, now stepping up to the plate, saying she wants her name in the hat to become the next Prime Minister. The second candidate, the front runner, is Justice Minister Michael Gove. He was campaign manager for the man who led the Brexit movement, former London Mayor Boris Johnson, who has dropped out of the race. Gove is a journalist highly influenced by Rupert Murdoch, Murdoch doesn't like Johnson. So when Johnson saw that he didn't have Gove's support, he thought it best to get out. Who will replace Cameron, in answer to your question, that will be decided by September 2nd.
So that's when we expect the snap election will be held. Jim Randall, you saw this drama play out in global markets all over the world. However, U.S. markets seem to have sort of recovered a little bit this week.
U.S. markets are, as of early Friday morning, U.S. markets had recovered. They were gaining much of the territory that they lost. In fact, all of the territory they lost.
So the shockwaves are starting to diminish. Is that what it is?
Well, that seems to be the case. And in Britain and France and Germany, those stock markets in Friday trading, they're up about 0.8%. They're recovering much of the ground that they lost. There's a handy graph on all of this data, and it's headed upward.
I'm sure a lot of investors are very pleased, especially it's happening on a long weekend. Now, Abby Lee, a lot of British voters may be having some regrets. Did they know what they were getting into when they voted for this last week?
Yeah, that's a great question. Speaking of economics, I think they're having a little bit of a buyer's remorse because the trending hashtag is #Brexit. And it's twofold because a lot of people didn't expect David Cameron to resign, and a lot of people said they actually didn't know that their vote will actually count, which is quite surprising.
The consequences have certainly been a lot larger than they were, I suppose, led to believe, right?
Definitely. And actually, people were searching a lot about what happens if we leave the EU right after the polls close, 2 hours after. And a lot of people were thinking, so why didn't they search that before the vote, before they voted? So that's an interesting question. And I just want to introduce one tweet from Google Trends that tweeted, the search for what happens if we leave the EU jumped more than 250%.
Wow. So there were a lot of questions there that were left unanswered. But Luis, let me talk to you about it. The perception has been largely negative in many parts of the world, but in Eastern Europe, there seems to be this Eurosceptic movement that seems to be benefiting from all this. What's driving that sentiment?
Pretty much the same thing that drove it in Britain, and that's the issue, the very thorny issue of immigration. Here in Hungary, well, this was a very big way station for migrants coming in last year. In fact, they're still coming in much smaller numbers, but that has certainly brought the issue to the forefront. The government, which is very much against Angela Merkel's demand or the imposition of quotas that she called last year, saying each EU member should take its fair share of migrants, was very unpopular here, especially among conservatives who dominate the government in Hungary. And so that is a very big issue. Now, what we have brewing in Hungary in particular, and it's just one of the aftershocks that's just come rumbling through Eastern Europe, is what is being referred to as the EU's other headache, another referendum brewing now in Hungary as we speak, calling for the government here to disobey any such mandate and not accept migrants, contrary to the EU's wishes. So
Luis,
that's brewing.
I imagine this has to be benefiting the elephant in the room, Russia.
Without a doubt. It is no secret here, even among the parties that get support from Mr. Putin, that Putin favors and benefits from dealing with individual EU members as opposed to one collective strong body that does things like impose horrible sanctions, very tough sanctions on Russia.
Okay. Jim, I want to get you back in this conversation because we're quickly running out of time. The results have already damaged UK's credit rating.
Absolutely.
How is that hurting the investment climate there?
Well, Fitch and others have downgraded because they're concerned about the impact on trade. They're concerned about the uncertainty of British leadership. They're concerned about the changing regulatory environment. Worried investors keep their money in their pockets, or they put it in gold, or they put it in U.S. government bonds.
Is this sending some of those investors perhaps to the United States?
Sure, the United States, any safe haven. I mean, they pushed up the yen for a while, which is not what the Japanese really need.
So in terms of the general trending topics right now, at least when it comes to Brexit, is it one you would say of general regret, as some people are calling it? What else are you hearing?
I do hear a lot of people making, actually, not so much regret, but a lot of the politicians are strongly saying that this was the right decision. So Nigel Farage, of course, he's
doubling down on.
Yeah, he is, and he's actually tweeting a lot about David Cameron's departure, although Cameron himself didn't really tweet about his departure yet.
But there's been some interesting pictures that have been coming out.
There has been, yeah.
Including one that seems to regret that that United Kingdom is going to run out of choices, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I wish we had more time because I think one of the things I want to talk to you about is that the tourism industry might benefit as a result of the pound falling, wouldn't it?
It'll be cheaper for my kid to go to Britain and study there.
Let's plan a holiday, Jim. But thank you to our panel, Luis, Jim, and G. We're going to take another quick break now, but when we come back, we'll take you on a tour of some of Washington's iconic landmarks and discover some of their secrets. You don't want to miss that. But before we go there, just a reminder, we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, questions, and comments on our Facebook page. The address is VOA The Correspondents. We'll be right back.